Welcome, listeners, to a brand new bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast. And today we have a special treat. Remember when we spoke to Lee Rubin a few episodes ago? So now we have a friend of Lee Rubin, David Boito, who is an author. And okay, we'll talk about the book, but when I saw the book, I was like, I didn't even know this entire world existed. So first of all, David, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're glad to have you. And you just came out with, I think it's your first book.
Yes.
Called Valley Flyers. And, well, why don't you tell us what it's about?
Okay, Valley Flyers is a story about a group of young teenage pilots, one in particular named Jay. Basically, their lives are consumed by flying remote-controlled model airplanes. And they all congregate at an actual miniature airfield, which is based on a local airfield near me named Apollo 11 Field. But anyway, this group of teenagers operate under the moniker of the Valley Flyers. And one of them, the protagonist, Jay, starts to realize that a newcomer to the airfield is sort of suspicious. And not everything he's saying adds up. And although he's full of bravado and hubris, there's some things that are leading Jay to believe that he may be involved in a spate of assassinations that have recently occurred using drone or quadricopter technology. How's that?
You know, I don't know what every book in the entire world is, but I don't think I've seen a book about this yet.
Well, that's why I wanted to do it. It feels like a world that's never really been explored, and it's a really fascinating, interesting world. Like I said, this airfield nearby, Apollo 11 Field, I mean, it's a great place. It literally looks like a miniature airport. They have paved runways. Different areas of the park are for drones. And then there's the largest tarmac, which is for large-scale or giant-scale aircraft, and going down to aircraft that are 2 pounds. And then there's the smaller runway, which is for small-scale aircraft that are 2 pounds or less. It's just a great world, and some of the people that are there, they're just so consumed by this hobby. It's a very expensive hobby, and so you will see, as a result of that, you'll see plenty of middle-aged, mostly men, I would say. I mean, there are some women there too, but you'll see, a lot of people that have the money to put into purchasing these expensive aircraft. They're not all expensive, but some of the things that these guys fly with are pretty incredible. And so anyway, yeah, I just never really been treated, and I just really wanted to explore that with the readers.
So we'll get sidetracked for a second here, but aside from being people who can spend the time or the money on this sort of hobby, are a lot of them pilots or just flying enthusiasts or kind of a mix, or what does that look like?
Some of them are pilots. I don't have the statistic of the percentage. I would say some of them are retired pilots that don't fly as much for whatever reason, maybe health reasons or whatever. So this offers the opportunity to still keep their chops up with their piloting skills. Some of them perhaps can't afford to fly full-size planes on a regular basis. And then, of course, there's young people, which is what I really wanted to center the story around. Younger people that obviously haven't quite gotten to the point where they can fly a full-size airplane, but this is a good training ground for that.
So does it translate that using whatever device you have to use to control these aircraft, if you would then go into like a simulator, is that very similar?
Yes, I would say it is similar. You have your controls, you have your stick, and you have certain gauges, your altimeter, and you have to know sort of the basics of flight in order to really be successful in flying these planes. And so, yeah, I would say there's a lot of commonality, and I would bet for sure a lot of these pilots could easily jump on an emulator and do pretty well.
Wow. And then I saw also from some of the book descriptions that it seems like a lot of these planes are designed like actual, I don't want to say historic planes, or like actual planes that like once flew. Is that kind of the standard for it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of the fun of it is once you get good and you stop crashing the airplanes, which obviously is expensive, then you can really get into the artistry. Once you know how to really handle the aircraft and keep it off the ground, then you can start getting into exploring, some of this historic aircraft, jet aircraft, all kinds of things. Right now, a lot of the newer airplanes they're all going electric. This sort of figures into the story, and they use a technology called lithium polymer battery or LiPo battery, which is a high storage battery for power thereby allowing you to fly the plane for ideally at least 10 minutes without needing to land and recharge. But the other thing about the LiPo batteries, and you may have heard stories in the news, they're highly explosive. So they really have to be treated with kid gloves. In fact, I had a neighbor down the street from me who was charging a LiPo battery and left it unattended, and his garage caught on fire.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to integrate that into the story because it's kind of an interesting aspect to the technology.
What were they using before that?
Before that was a fuel, jet airplane, model airplane fuel. And they have these engines called glow plug engines, which are mostly propeller aircraft. But you actually, you pour the fuel in, and that's how they run. So consequently, those are kind of explosive too. So, trading one kind of explosive for another.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so this is a fun hobby, you were saying, right?
It is. Once you get to a certain point where you're not crashing the airplane, because that's not so fun and it can be costly. That's why they start out with, they're called foamies. It's literally a sort of a styrofoam aircraft, and that's a really good learning aircraft because it's sort of indestructible. No, it's not completely indestructible, but a lot more forgiving.
Okay. And then also that you said the new batteries give about 10 minutes of flight time. Is that a lot of flying time? Because it doesn't sound long.
Yeah, that actually is a pretty good flight time. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be able to... You're flying at an airfield and you're confined to a certain area and you're doing tricks. 10 minutes is not bad. If you're in a competition, you can certainly do your routine. You have plenty of time left over. If you're in a race, it's plenty of time for that. The technology will only get better and better, and probably already has in the last few months, but that's sort of a standard.
Just looking at this all together, you're saying that, you want to explore this world a little more, but why would you even think to write a book about it? Like, why was this... Okay, this is the answer instead of even coming out with like some sort of pictorial something or other, website or something.
Well, in all honesty, I'm also a screenwriter, and so I actually thought, I've been a big fan of Spielberg-type adventure movies, Goonies-type movies, and I thought to myself, wow, this would be a great movie, just a great arena world setting for a movie, and so I actually tackled the story first as a film script, because I think it is very visual.
Yeah.
And so that script is done and was done a couple of years ago. It made some rounds around town and it didn't immediately spark any huge interest on behalf of the Hollywood producer crowd. But I just loved the story and the setting, and I just thought, you know what? I just want to write this as a book and get it to readers. And so that's what I did.
Was it hard coming off of screenwriting to write a novel where you're like, oh great, I need way more words?
That's a good question. I had already written a fair amount of prose. I went to UCLA and I was a minor in the creative writing program, mostly doing short stories under an author named Brian Moore, who's a Canadian author who's written an interesting series of books about missionaries going to the outback in Canada and all the adventures they have. But anyway, so I had sort of already done that type of writing, but then I sort of segued away from it into screenwriting, and then I was coming back to it. It was sort of coming back to an old friend, although it is a different style of writing, and I did sort of have to, because in a screenplay, you're encouraged to use less word, not more, and your dialogue, you're encouraged to be brief, to the point, laconic, and so that I had to sort of retrain myself back to, I don't have to worry about a bit of dialogue being 3 or 4 lines. That's okay. I need to describe this area more. I need to describe that object more, and that's okay. And I did go through sort of a little bit of a curve there as far as that goes. And I had an editor that read the first draft, and he said, I can tell off the bat that your prose is terse.
Right.
So, yes, that's the long answer to your question.
Yeah, even also you're talking about doing short stories, but even a short story to a novel is not the same thing. It's much longer.
It is, and so with this, it was nice because I had the outline of the story in the screenplay already, and so I kind of knew where it was going.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was very helpful.
Yeah. My first novel was also written off of an idea for a screenplay. It's actually kind of common.
The Ever After series?
No, it's a Sapphire Legend. I never finished the screenplay of it because it was actually the opposite. I was looking for more words, so that's when I switched over to writing the novels, and I haven't stopped writing from there. So
Yeah. Who knows started the process then?
yeah, it's just interesting to hear. Is this something that everyone goes through, or was this just me?
Not just you, not at all.
Yeah. Are you thinking now? I mean, you don't have to give too many details, but are you thinking now? Yeah, I kind of like this novel stuff. I'm gonna stick with it, or you're just like, I got it out with this story.
I absolutely am wanting to do another one much sooner than later. I have an idea, actually, that's based on another screenplay of mine that, another story that I've loved for a long time, and I'm already sort of taking baby steps to turning that into a novel as well.
That's definitely a way for the stories to get out there, I guess.
Yeah, what I love about just this experience so far has been, obviously it's self-published, so I'm learning as I go, but I just enjoy connecting with the readers and getting their Amazon reviews, and it's really nice, just direct contact with the readers, and I just feel like there's no intermediary. It's like a direct contact with your reader, and I really love it.
So you're saying, like, for screenplays, you feel like there's an intermediary because the screen in between, or because the director's in between, or the actors?
Both. Yeah. First of all, you write the screenplay, and then you got to go to an agent, more likely, and they have something to say about it. And then before they want to take it to producers, then you have the producers who have to read it.
Right.
And then if you're lucky enough to get it made, then obviously then there's the director involved, and then there's the interpretation of the actors, which is all well and good. It's just more of a collaborative medium. Mm-hmm. Whereas this, as a writer, I find more rewarding thanks to this self-publishing platform that Amazon has. You're just able to go straight to your readers, and it motivates you. It's motivating to hear from readers that have enjoyed the books.
Yeah. Well, the flip side is that you could also hear directly from readers who trash the books.
Right. That too. And that's part of the deal.
That's right.
But I'm kind of used to criticism. Believe me, in the screenwriting world, you just get so much, there's just a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
And so you get kind of used to that and kind of take it with a grain of salt at a certain point.
That's good. Is that part of why you chose to do self-publishing instead of a traditional did you even try for traditional publishing, or you just wanted to, I'm just going to do it, I'll take charge of it, and that's it?
That's a good question. I did actually go out to some literary book agent. I could have gone out to some more. I got a little bit of feedback, not much. I got a little bit of feedback, and then I realized, this is like the same kind of process I'm running into that I was sort of looking to bypass with screenwriting. Was there's an intermediary there, which is all, again, well and good.
Right.
It's a necessary thing. But in the terms of this story, at a certain point, I was ready to just get it out. I did go through, I used the readsy.com website, and found a great editor. Worked with him on it, and another company called Good Story. I went through around with them, reading it. And after that, I was encouraged enough to just take the plunge. I just didn't want to wait. I guess I was just a little impatient at this point.
Well, yeah, everything is just, it takes a long time.
Yeah, no, we'll see, on the next round, maybe I'll give that a shot again.
Right. I guess you always have this as your option B or option C in case you get impatient again.
Which is nice to have that fallback plan.
Yeah. And would you also say, that you went to people to work with editors, is that something that you were just like, oh, let's try this out? Or you're like, no, I knew I had to go to an editor. I need to get another set of eyes on it, and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely knew I had to get another set of eyes on it. I think that's a really important process of writing. At a certain point, you sort of lose a certain amount of objectivity. So getting another set of eyeballs, especially an experienced set of eyeballs that know what the market is looking for, is extremely helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this story that you chose to write it with teens, young adult officially. So why did you choose that, the young adult, instead of going, any other age?
That's a good question. I sort of fell into the young adult category. I mean, at first I was sort of leaning toward just straight contemporary thriller, but I think I actually heard on your podcast somebody mention upper YA. Is that the term?
Yeah, they can use that for an older, more mature YA audit. Yeah.
And so one of the readers that I had read it said, well, this is YA. It doesn't tick all the boxes. I know there's a lot of YA that gets into sort of internal issues more than this book. I mean, this book, I would say, is more straight action adventure. And just several people sort of mentioned, well, this is YA. I mean, it's may not tick all the boxes. I just decided to use that as the genre.
Yeah. Sometimes people will just look at only, what's the age of protagonist? Okay, that's YA. Or like, does it always center around that? Okay, that's YA. Yeah.
Which I know is not always the case. I mean,
right.
There are certain boxes to tick in YA that this story probably doesn't tick. It just seemed to fit best into that category because is it about sort of older teenagers that are coming of age.
Yeah, it felt like YA to me. It did not feel like YA to me.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of YA is still read by adults, but it doesn't mean it's not also YA. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did you decide? Because there's so many kinds of planes in here. It's almost like, were there so many more that you didn't write about? Or how did you even approach the plane part of it?
That's a funny thing. I love old planes, and I just wanted to include a lot of them. You do see a lot of different models at the airfield, and that was sort of fun. I hope that it didn't draw you out of the story too much.
Well, that would lend to the visual medium, right? Because if I would just see the picture of it, if it would be on screen, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's what that is.
Yes, and you probably didn't know what some of those planes look like. I get that. Yeah, that's sort of a geeky pilot, historical plane aficionado thing.
It's part of introducing the readers to this world, because I'm like, I had no idea. For me, flying objects are just planes and drones. And like, that's the entire category for me, So.
And that's good that you know that difference. I mean,
that's great. Oh, okay, good. I got one thing.
Yes, that's right. You're one step closer to piloting.
So I was also wondering, because you said that this is more of an expensive hobby, and then it seems like the kids you focus on are all coming from different kinds of backgrounds, but we don't always see them with only the same kind of plane or drone. So the ones that they own personally, but then where are the other ones coming from?
Firstly, drones are actually not that expensive. You can get a pretty decent drone for a couple $100. When I say super expensive, I'm talking about the giant scale planes, this planes with a 6-foot wingspan, the jet engines. Those can run $10,000.
Whoa. So let's take it. 6-foot wingspan?
Yes.
That's massive.
Yes. It's incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some of these planes are amazing. Yeah, I mean, I just envisioned these kids either saved up some money from birthdays or allowance or whatever and purchased them. You can get a decent remote-controlled plane for a few $100 as well. Again, the older guys are going to be flying the bigger stuff and the more jets and things like that, because these jets, they can fly 200 miles an hour. It could be, in the wrong hands, sort of a weapon. Kent, the guy that runs the airfield, I think he loans out planes to these kids as well, because he has a whole fleet of them himself. And so they just come into contact with different aircraft.
And then this is a total side question.
Yeah.
These airfields, do people just have memberships to go to them? Is it kind of like a country club, like a golf club, or where do they get their money from?
Okay, here's the deal, and this is a little bit of inside baseball. I envision this park as the airfield as property of Kent. In reality, for instance, the miniature airfield near me is actually owned by the city of Los Angeles. It's part of the city parks.
Oh.
So you can go and fly there for free. Okay, here's the other sort of inside baseball, is that there is a group of pilots called the Valley Flyers. They spell themselves differently. It's F-L-Y-E-R-S than the way I spell it in the book. They're not teenagers per se, but they are an organized group of pilots that operate out of that airfield. And so they sort of inspired this as well. And again, I took some creative license and changed the details of reality and created this private park. But yeah, you can go fly at these actual places for free. Obviously, if you're going to be in the club, I'm sure there's some kind of dues. And I don't know, there probably are some private airfields in the U.S. These places are all over the United States. There are some that charge, but the one near me does not. And again, that's because it's owned by the park system.
That's so interesting. Did you tell them that they inspired your Valley Flyers? Did you tell that group that they're kind of there but not?
I have not actually in contact with them yet directly as that organization, but I want to, because I think it'd be a fun thing for them to read, and I think it paints them in a very good light.
Yeah. And they'd definitely be able to better picture some of the planes you talk about.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, 2 specific points I have to make about the book. Number one, okay, now I'm forgetting his name. I think it starts with a D. There's the kid who gets the car that looks like an old mail truck or something like that. It's one of Jay's friends.
Dairy, D-A-R-I?
Yeah, is he the one who gets the car that looks like the mail truck?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, the mail truck car is hilarious. So just putting that out there. But here's the other thing. So for Jay, as the protagonist, he's going to be the one who's going to be suspicious. He's going to be the one, all these kinds of stuff, right? Because that's what's driving the plot and all the story technical stuff. But you also talk about him being someone who believes in conspiracy theories and UFOs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the way he talks about stuff, I think there would be a point also that I'd just be like, Jay, stop talking. Jay, you're crazy. Yeah, I don't know. There are sometimes it seems like his friends maybe shut him down a little bit too quickly. But if I was friends with a guy who every single time there was like a pattern in the grass, thought it was like a crop circle. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but I also would be, you're nuts. There is a part of that where, sure, Jay got it right this time, but, next time he's going to be like, remember the one time I got it right? And you'll be like, no, you're 1 for 375 right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know where to go with that. But I'm just saying, I did have that as I was reading it to think that just because you got it right this time, Jay, don't get too confident. You're probably going to get it wrong the next time.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's probably what they'd be saying to him after this. It's a very valid point. You're right. I mean, I have friends that sort of went on and on about some of this stuff. And at a certain point, you're like, you know what? Let's talk about something else. I don't want to hear it. And I think that's probably the case here as well with Jay. He knows sort of bounds and limits how far he can push stuff, although in this case, he's highly motivated. One thing that I felt like had been sort of instrumental for Jay in this case was, this was actual fact, I believe, prior to the 9/11 attacks, there was a group of the hijackers that trained at a small airfield in Florida.
Right.
And so I think Jay kind of remembers that and thinks that's happening here. That's kind of where he's coming from with that.
Okay. And then did you have to look up a lot of drone rules and stuff like that? Or how much liberty did you take with that? Oh, yeah,
yes,
you did?
I did. Yes. And there are all kind of rules. The airfield near here has very strict rules. In fact, what's going on now is because of the fact that drones are becoming more and more common, the FAA is getting more involved, because you do have these instances where a drone getting near an actual helicopter or an actual aircraft can be very dangerous.
Right.
It's like you try and fly a drone anywhere near LAX, you're going to get in some serious trouble and probably go to jail. So there are all kinds of rules in terms of your altitude, how high you can go at this particular airfield, because they're not too far from Van Nuys Airport. So, yeah, they don't want any close calls with actual planes. But anyway, yeah, the FAA, they're starting to really want to get involved, and you need to register your aircraft now so they know who you are. They want, especially if you're flying a drone, not so much the lowest end consumer drones, but anything sort of higher end. They want to know about the GPS and all that stuff, so that they can actually shut down your drone with what's called a geofence, and so that your drone will just drop if it hits one of these geofences if you're going into an area like an airport or someplace where the drone should not be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, because you also have in residential areas. Okay, that's also a great moment. I don't know if I should say it though. Cassie, where she takes out the shotgun. That's it's such a perfect moment. We're just like, good job.
That's nice. Yeah, I thought that was a fun scene.
He's a little bit over the top because, well, maybe it isn't. I don't know. A girl hanging out in the backyard just has the shotgun just sitting right there. It just.
She's from Texas, and that's where she's relocated from.
Yeah, right. She's a really big believer in privacy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed that scene.
Okay. Yeah, just to keep us within our usual time-ish, even though we're not usually so good with that, but we'll try it this time. So
okay.
We always wrap up with a fill in the blank of, I love it when writer to editor, stories, whatever you want to use, plots, this, that, booksellers, publishers, whatever, covers, do this, and I really don't like it when they do this. So how would you fill in the blank for that?
I really like it when an author forces you to turn the page.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like it when they tell you exactly what the character is thinking. That's a little screenwriter in me talking, I guess. You're taught in screenwriting, avoid on-the-nose dialogue where the character is telling you exactly what's on their mind. You want to have illusion, you want to have misdirects or whatever.
Right. Yeah, very good. Oh, okay, well, just ask quickly, what kind of books do you read these days? Is it like the action-adventure type stuff or kind of all over in your reading? Yeah.
Big fan of people like Lee Child and the Jack Reacher series. I like a little bit of science fiction here and there. I just read a really good book. It was about an author. I like books about writers.
Really?
It's about a writer. He's had one book published and it's received critical acclaim, and then he sort of lost his mojo, and now he's a writing teacher at a writing seminar, and he meets this guy who's going to the seminar, and he has this great story. Anyway, long story short, this guy from his writing seminar drops dead. So the writer says, I really that was a great plot. I think it's actually called The Plot.
Oh, that's funny.
So he's like, well, this guy's dead. I'm just going to use his plot. So he goes on and writes this book based on this dead guy's plot, and about all this stuff that ensues. Eventually, so it comes out and becomes a huge success. But then things start happening where this writer that stole the plot starts to realize that there's more to this dead guy's life than he thought. And so it's actually a good story, but that's, I guess, more of a thriller. I like thriller.
So it does seem, more in the That's fine that you said that you like stories about writers. Is it just because...
I do. How about you?
I don't know. It's not specifically. It's sometimes I'm just like, oh, come on, get over yourselves, people. Stop writing about ourselves.
I don't know what it is. I mean, it's not all stories about writers, but ones that are just sort of put a writer in sort of a unique situation that they wouldn't be in otherwise. I don't know.
That's good. I mean, obviously, there's stories for all kinds of people. That's the point, right?
Exactly.
For example, Valley Flyers. Yeah, that's a good way to wrap up with a nice plug at the end.
Thank you so much. It's been quite a pleasure.
It's been great speaking with you. Thank you. This was a bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast featuring author David Boito. To find out more about David and his work, please visit the link in the episode notes. To find out more about Oh My Word podcast and all the great stuff we're up to, please follow us on Instagram at Oh My Word podcast. Subscribe to Oh My Word podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And check us out at el10mountain.com. Music is by Tim Burke. Thank you so much for joining us. Catch you next time.